All right, let me see if I can do another segment of the TriMet board meeting before I start doing calls, because if I start doing calls, I won't have any energy left for the TriMet board meeting. It drains all my energy. I get wrapped up into it, and for some reason, I don't know why. I don't really know why I get so into it. But before we do that, let's talk about the masking mandate is over for now, and everybody's losing their minds over it. It's really something else. I happen to know firsthand how much chaos this whole mask thing has created in the society, and I'm always against government telling me what to do. I mean, I expect government to mitigate anything like this and give us the information and do the right thing, but they haven't done the right thing even once with this. Okay, the lockdowns were ineffective, the masks were ineffective, the vaccines were ineffective. It's all been a giant waste of time as far as I'm concerned. And here they still want to continue. At the same time, they won't let you have things like ivermectin. They won't allow any alternative treatments. They demand obedience to the vaccine cult. So I'm glad to see it gone. I'm glad to see that it won't cause any more attacks on public transportation. But this guy here, where is it? Where did I watch history? I just had it keyed up here. Bus driver life.
Welcome to Bus Driver Life. My
Move it up.
date was originally set to expire. The highest profile mask requirements in the country, persisting and verbally what has also been happening to bus drivers. So let's take a look at a few situations that have happened with bus drivers during the mask mandate. San Francisco bus driver assaulted with wooden bat after asking 3 passengers to wear masks. Bus driver punched in head after telling passenger to wear mask. This next situation happened in Philadelphia quite recently, April 6, 2022. Suspect wanted for slapping SEPTA bus driver over on-board mask policy. So how are bus drivers feeling about the mask mandate being deemed unlawful, so therefore not being in place in most situations? Clearly, I can't speak for everyone, but from what I've been hearing from different bus drivers is this. Some don't like the idea of the mask mandate not being put in place because some drivers do not feel comfortable during a pandemic to be transporting passengers who are not wearing masks on their bus. And that is totally understandable for a driver to feel that way. But I would like to also point out that just from my experience and the experience of a whole bunch of other bus drivers, a lot of the times people are not wearing their masks correctly on the bus anyway.
He ain't lying.
This is 2 things that I see all the time. A person will get on the bus without their mask. They'll be in my face while they're paying their fare, asking questions. I've even had people without their mask on, coughing and sneezing in my direction and asking questions and doing whatever. Then they will sit down and then put their mask on. You also have people that will get on the bus with the mask on. Then once they sit down, they'll pull the mask under their chin. Or if they decide to get onto the phone and have a phone conversation, they'll pull their mask off while they're talking on their phone. So it's very rare that you're going to have a bus full of people all wearing their masks properly, meaning prior to even getting on the bus, you already have the mask on covering your mouth and nose, and it stays on the entire time until you exit the bus. It is extremely rare for that to happen, and it's very difficult for a bus driver to monitor a situation like that while you still have to keep your eyes on the road and operate the bus safely. So it has been a huge challenge dealing with it. And on the other hand, you have a lot of bus drivers that are happy that the mandate has been lifted. The main reason is basically what I've already shown you. Bus drivers have been physically and verbally assaulted and abused by people who do not like the mask mandate. Now let's take a look at how some transit agencies have already
All right. Well,
responded.
I want to hear his explanation because he said it exactly right and better than I could. He just told you the truth of the mask mandate. Okay, and I can't present it to you any more accurate than he has. So, and by the way, if you want, he's got a great channel. It's called Bus Driver Life. He's got all these great videos about being a bus driver. So if you're interested in bus driving, I would encourage you to check out that guy's channel. Anyway, enough of that. On to the TriMet board meeting. Yes. Final comment. I'm glad the mask mandates are over.
We have one ordinance to consider this morning, and we move now to the first reading of Ordinance 366. It's regarding service changes planned to take effect this fall when the Division Transit Project opens to riders. I'll ask General Counsel Shelley Devine to read the ordinance by title only.
Thank you, Ms. Board President. Ordinance number 366 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon adopting service changes and revising route designations. This is the first reading and public hearing.
Thank you. Before we hold a public hearing, Mr. General Manager, do you have any additional comments? And
all right, I'm looking at it, and it's just changing. It's about the FX division line. I guess they have to, I don't know why this has to go to the board, but I guess it does. They're discontinuing service on the line 2 to make way for the FX line. Yes, sir, dog. Can't wait to see this. I can't wait.
would you like to call on anyone to address questions from the board?
Thank you, President Simmons and board. Briefly, I will say that this service change proposal is an exciting one for me and for the organization.
Sure.
It relates to the completion of construction of the Division Transit Project and also launching our first FX, Frequent Express, High Capacity Bus Line. FX Division Line 2 is on track to begin this September. And with the launch comes some adjustments to service in a few areas of Southeast Portland. To go over the details, I'm going to call on Tom Mills, our Director of Mobility Planning and
Mr.
Policy,
TRIMET.
and Carl Green, welcome Carl, who is a former TRIMET Title VI Administrator and continues to help us in that capacity.
The Title VI, the most wasteful bureaucracy ever created. Equity analysis, some baloney, ridiculous crap that just doesn't do anything.
Tom and Carl, welcome.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Board President Simmons and the rest of the board for having us today to talk about the annual service plan as it's related to the launch of Division FX. I want to ask Kim real quick. I don't know if Carl has been promoted to panelist, and if he hasn't, if I could ask that he be done. As Sam had mentioned, Carl is joining us. Carl is a former TRIMET employee. He now joins us and conducts the Title VI analysis for service changes in a consulting fashion, creatives consulting.
Yeah, that's the government to corporate revolving door. This is a little club. You know, all these executives get to work in the private sector when they get done with their jobs here. You know, tit for tat, payback.
And he'll be joining me today. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as we considered the fiscal year 23 annual service plan, we did recognize that we are dealing with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The COVID-19 scamdemic, where they destroyed the society so they could say they could build it back and they could steal all the money, give it to the billionaires, and you're out of luck. The scamdemic, okay? Get it straight. Scamdemic.
And which, still puts us in a place where we have less riders, less customers today, and as a result, less revenue.
And you have no service. Your operator shortage is so bad that they're canceling trains and canceling buses constantly. Riding TRIMET now is very risky.
Additionally, as was mentioned earlier,
we talk about less revenue, and that's, we know this is a gaslight, because the amount of revenue from the riders is pretty much insignificant to TRIMET. But they'll always focus on this because that's part of this technocratic psyop. Somehow that's going to affect us. But we know better, those of us who keep up with this material. We know that's a lie.
We are experiencing a significant operator shortage.
Significant.
And those
Yeah, significant. And they've done nothing to change it. Their little tiddly bonus is nothing. And I've said it 100 times. I'm going to say it again. You need to restructure the entire salary structure. Walmart recently began offering $100,000 paychecks to truck drivers. That's what public transportation needs to do, but they won't do it because the riders are nobodies. So they don't care if they have to wait. They're disposable people. Bus riders are not counted in these technocrats up here with these six-figure salaries. Don't give a shit about your bus riders. I'm sorry to have to say that, but it's been true forever, long before the scamdemic. Even then, I mean, they just don't care. You're just disposable people.
Those two combine to really kind of limit what changes we were able to make for going into.
Now, let me also bring up the point that somebody on Twitter, I think I mentioned this in my last video, but I don't remember, mentioned that Jarrett Walker is currently working with TRIMET to restructure their system. So, I mean, what that said to me, see, I know what Jarrett Walker does. He goes around the country, he goes around the world with his brilliant mind because he's a transit guru and everybody loves him. He's got a whole cult. I mean, thousands of people cult. He's working with them to redo their system. So they already know what they're doing. Okay. They cut this service on purpose. I'm 99% sure that they did this on purpose because Jarrett Walker's working with them right now to redesign it. So they already knew they were going to cut this service. But they're going to have him, the brilliant Jarrett Walker, is going to come out with his public relations campaign and tell the world how wonderful it is. The mainstream media will parrot it. TriMet will say he's the greatest mind in the history of public transportation. And the public will fall for it because they fall for everything. The public falls for everything. I mean, they fall for literally everything the government does. It's hard to believe from my point of view that there's this many stupid people, but there are. It's definitely the vast majority of people.
Fiscal year 23. However, we do still have a commitment to start up FX division. And so the changes that we propose in this ordinance really are related to the startup of FX division and nothing beyond that.
So here they have this crappy system that's completely failing, but they have a new FX line. I mean, there you go. Right there you have the complete and utter disconnected reality of the technocracy doing all this stuff at the same time. Their system is a failure, but they don't care. I mean, the failure doesn't matter to them. They're not accountable to anybody.
Next slide, please. And just to refamiliarize ourselves with FX division, as General Manager DeSue mentioned, it is our first
6 minutes. That's good. If you're having a bus every 6 minutes, then I would say you have done something right here. That's true frequency. Even 12 minutes, I'll go with 12. Okay, I mean, if they have the drivers, I mean, it's because the same operators that they can't find are the ones that are going to drive this thing.
Bus rapid transit line. It will operate along Division Street. It launches on September 18th, 2022. And it will be an upgrade to the existing Line 2 service. It will run at its peak. It will run every 6 minutes during rush hour, and its base frequency will be 12 minutes. So during the middle of the day, it will run 12-minute service. Certainly nothing worse than that.
And we'll be watching.
Replaces the Line 2 division. So this ordinance will be retiring the Line 2.
So they have to approve this for some reason. I'm not sure why, but
division, and will also then be introducing the new division FX. I do want to point out the routing is a little bit different than what the current Line 2 is. On the east side, the Line 2 ends at Gresham Transit Center. This route will extend to the Cleveland MAX station. So that will be one more stop, but it will it's about a half-mile additional service on the east end. And then on the west end, we will be taking a different route to get to downtown. So today, Line 2 operates on Division Street to Southeast 7th Avenue, and then crosses the Hawthorne Bridge to enter downtown. The new FX division will cross the Tillicum crossing. It will go through South Waterfront, where it will serve the OHSU buildings, and then up through PSU and along the Transit Mall. If we go to the next slide. So as a result of that route change, there would be a gap in service, or a loss of service on Southeast 7th Avenue. Now that's an area that we don't really want to lose service on. We do get a good amount of rides along Southeast 7th Avenue. So in order to address that, we are recommending in this ordinance that we change the routing of Line 10 Herald, as well as increase its weekday frequency, so it is closer to what the existing Line 2 service is. And then we add weekend service to the Line 10. The Line 10 doesn't today have weekend service. It did long ago, and we unfortunately had...
Yeah, I drove it back when it had, and you know, that's another one of their lines they destroyed.
To reduce it, actually going all the way back to the recession of 2008.
Yeah, the fake recession, where they used that as the excuse to destroy their other huge service cut that they did.
2009, and it hadn't been restored. It's been on the long list of restorations, and that one we hadn't gotten to, but we're excited about the possibility of restoring that weekend service on Line 10. But of course, this would mean removing service from the Ladd's Addition neighborhood, as you see there in the map. Much of those bus stops would still be within walking distance of Line 10 and the Division FX. Next slide, please.
Yeah, well, it's going to hurt some people.
So as part of our annual service plan process, we did quite a bit of outreach and engagement with the community. As you see here, as always, we do a good amount of online outreach and advertisements. We make sure that postcards are sent to every property within a quarter mile of the route. A quarter mile is thought to be the distance that people would walk to a bus route, and we do that in multiple languages. I believe also, actually, we had it also in Russian and Ukrainian, which are commonly spoken along the division line. We also, over the course of the fall and winter, had 3 open house meetings, and we attended a couple of the advisory committees, both TIAC and the CAT, to present these changes.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Nobody had any say in this. Okay, they dreamed this up, the technocracy. Okay, there was no public hearing about, should we do this? They just did it, just like they do. They said, we're going to do this, and it's wonderful. You're going to love it. It's great. We're doing it. Now, give us your manufactured consent.
We also engaged in community-based outreach, working with 3 organizations, both are APANO.
These non-governmental organizations, bullshit organizations, I call them. You know, the nonprofit sector, poverty pimp section of the whole deal.
Latino Network and Slavic Community Center of Northwest. In doing so, we reached out through their networks. We also contracted with them to have focus groups with 10 or more community members in each focus group. And the next slide. So in regards to actual responses that we were able to...
Look, that's actually... They oppose. The majority oppose. 42% couldn't care less. I don't know who they asked. I mean, there are 57 comments. Okay, so 57 people who know the topic responded, and they don't like the idea. That's interesting. Now, 88 comments on the Line 10. Most people support it, which is interesting because it changes the whole route. Although close to that amount oppose it.
Able to record from people.
I can't believe they're telling you the actual comments here.
We had 57 responses regarding the retirement of Line 2 Division and the launch of the BRT on Division,
They don't like it.
and also the route change to the Herald Street, Line 10 Herald service. And as you can see, you know, what we often find is that the folks who support these types of things, you know, don't always speak up. They kind of say, okay, fine. And the most vocal tend to be people who are opposed. But when you add the support and the neutral together, you find that the opposition is quite a bit smaller than.
See him spin that? He spins it. That's what they do. That's their spin doctors.
Support and neutral together. Next slide, please. So with this, I'm going to hand this off to Carl Green from Creatives Consulting to talk a little bit about the Title VI analysis. Carl, are you on the call now?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks.
And thank you, Kimberly. So good morning, TRIMET Board of Directors, General Manager DeSue. I'm here to present on the Title VI Service Equity Analysis component of the FY23 Annual Service Plan.
A whole bureaucracy for this. They've created a whole tax-funded, ridiculous bureaucracy for this. And it's just so ridiculous. I can't believe it exists.
So with this slide here, it's basically the clause for Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which provides the legal footing to ensure transit agencies are upholding the assurances under Title VI. And as a requirement by the Federal Transit Administration, it requires TRIMET and other properties to be able to prepare and submit an equity analysis before the Board of Directors for their ultimate approval.
And in another example, they've never had a negative Title VI analysis. In other words, they've never said what TRIMET is doing is bad. It's always what TRIMET is doing is good. So it's bullshit.
Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview, a flowchart of TRIMET's Title VI Service Equity Analysis. The takeaway here, it's a comprehensive approach to ensure that we are assessing the nature of impacts, both benefits and burdens, with regards to service changes. And as you move from the left to right, essentially what we're looking at here for the first component on the left is if it constitutes a major service change.
You know the other reason why this is complete nonsense? Because all of their service is in violation of Title VI now. I mean, they don't really have any services. It's very sketchy. I mean, they can't run their system. So the entire system is in violation of Title VI. But, you know, they're going to go through this nonsense motion here.
If it does, then there's an assessment that takes place for impacts with respect to either minority or BIPOC populations. And in addition to that, low-income populations at or below 150% of the federal poverty level, which, as defined by the Title VI program, is the definition for low-income populations. So that is where we're evaluating possible impacts. And if there's any potential impacts on these populations, Title VI protected populations, TRIMET will move forward with providing alternatives and mitigations and avoiding those potential impacts on Title VI populations. Next slide, please. As Tom recently went over, the changes with regards to the fiscal year 23 annual service plan, all three met the major service change threshold. The FX2 division, a new transit line, the Line 2 division being retired, those automatically constitute a major service change. And then with respect to the Line 10 Herald Street, it's a reroute. There's a frequency increase over 15% on weekdays, a span increase over 15% on weekdays, as well as a span increase on the weekends of 15%. So all met the major service change threshold for this service proposal. Next slide. So this slide presents the different analysis for each type of major service change. And as you can see from the top, major service increases, major service reductions, or other major service changes, the way in which TRIMET applies its disparate impact and disproportionate burden policies correspond with the types of changes. So first, I'll cover down on major service reductions with regards to this plan. Next slide, please. All right, so TRIMET's disparate impact and disproportionate burden policies have established thresholds to evaluate possible impacts. With respect to the policies, it's applied at the line level, and in addition to that, at the system level to ensure that we are looking at the aggregate or compounding effects of a potential service change. Next slide. All right, so what this pictogram is showing you provides an illustration on the threshold, or for the ability to be able to test the disparate impacts on a particular line specifically.
What is this supposed to mean? What is it? How do they come to? Where do they get this graph? What does it mean? It's just like two bars, but the bars minority population in the district. So what? So of the whole district, 33% are minority served by the line. Okay.
A single line. And as you can see here, I'm on my phone here, so I'll try to scoot in a little bit further to explain what this pictogram is showing. So essentially what we're assessing we create a quarter-mile buffer around each particular route to assess the minority and low-income populations around a particular route. And then we compare that with respect to our service district average for both minority and low-income populations. And at the bottom of the graph here, you'll see that minority population within the TRIMET service district is 30%. So the service district average is 30%. Next slide. And then what we do here, as I previously mentioned, with regards to testing for disparate impact at the system-wide level.
What is this crap?
So essentially, we're aggregating all.
Look at this. Look at this. What the fuck is this chart supposed to mean? I mean, how do they come up with 25%, 20%? How do they come up with that? I mean, where do they get these numbers from? I need a beer.
All the service changes, so the two different lines for the major service reduction and the service increase, we are aggregating it and using the 4/5 rule. So if there's a 20% difference, whether if it's an increase or decrease, if minority populations stand to benefit more, that's a good thing. But if it's receiving 20% less, that's when we want to course correct to ensure that we're mitigating or avoiding that potential impact. And that's with regards to service reduction or service increases. On the flip side, if we are making service reductions, we want to make sure that minority and low-income populations are not receiving more than 20% difference compared to non-minority and higher income populations. Next slide.
Whatever that. It's ridiculous.
So what I'm going to be going over here is the results of the system-wide level impacts.
I mean, where do they get the numbers? I mean, this doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's just, what do they make it up? Percent of TRIMET district, non-minority, negatively impact, 0.16. Minority population, disparate impact, 0.2%. Percent of district minority negatively. How do they come up with that? I mean, how do they even come up with it?
So what this table presents here, you can see here that a slightly greater percentage of the district's non-minority populations will be negatively impacted. But if you look utilizing our system-wide threshold for disparate impact, which is if minority populations are receiving more than 0.2%, then that would be considered an adverse impact. But as we can see here, it's less, 0.06% is above or below the 0.2%. So it's
now, I'm not a stupid person. I've gone to college and everything. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry. I don't know where they come up with the numbers. I don't know how they figure it out. I get no I have no clue.
Does not result in a disparate impact at the system-wide level.
And they've never come with an analysis that said there was a problem. Like I say, every single Title VI statement is always positive for TRIMET. No impact.
Next slide. Similar to the
What's this?
To the system-wide level impacts for disparate impact for minority, it's the system-wide findings for low income, is similar in the way that it does not result in
disproportionate burden analysis. I mean, talk about bureaucracy out of control.
Burden, given that the district's low-income populations are similarly impacted to higher income populations. Next slide. All right, so now I'll be going over the analysis for the major service increases. Next slide. All right, so as far as for minority populations at the system level, there's a slightly greater percentage of the district's minority populations will be positively impacted. So that's a great thing. And with respect to Title VI and per that result, it is not result.
Look, even Sam looks confused. Look at Sam. He's like, what is this shit?
In a disparate impact finding. Next slide. And for the system level, similar to the findings for minority population with the disparate impact policy, it does not result in a disproportionate burden. As General Manager Dessou mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is an overall exciting service proposal, given that we're adding a lot of service benefit for Title VI populations. So that is exactly what the analysis shown. So I'm excited to be delivering the presentation this morning. Next slide.
Yeah, whatever, man. Just get out of here.
All right. So as far as the service equity analysis conclusion, again, as I covered down on, there's no system level disparate impact on the two major service increases. There's no disproportionate burden on the two major service increases. All improvements are on lines and service areas with above minority populations and with average or above low-income populations. With regards to the service decreases, there's no system-level disparate impact or disproportionate burden. And as Tom mentioned earlier, with the route change for the line 10, there's no adverse effect on that major service reduction. And then overall, the results is that the service equity analysis does not require any modification of the proposed changes. Next slide.
Hey.
All right. So as far as next steps, today you're hearing the service equity analysis along with the FY23 service proposal as far as the first board reading. Following this, the next step is April 15th is when the public comment on the Title VI analysis will conclude. And on April 27th, during the second board meeting, is the ultimate approval of the equity analysis. With that being said, that is the last slide. I'd like to open up the floor for any questions.
What questions?
Yes. Are there any questions from the board? And Director Way.
Oh, there's a question. I can't believe it. Let's see.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this comprehensive analysis, Carl. That's super important, and also just really glad to see that there was no negative impact to the minority populations that we're trying to serve here with the service changes. I guess my question was just back to that slide that Tom initially talked about. There were several community-based organizations where we were trying to conduct outreach when we were initially proposing the service changes. And my question was, now that we have this analysis, right, and we have the board process of approving this at another date, how will these community-based organizations be, and I'm guessing there might be more to this, be just further brought into this conversation about these changes and kind of that plan moving forward with the community outreach.
Thank you. Yes, typically the way we do it is when after the board approves annual service changes, we then, as we approach the date of those changes, we reach out to the community
Yeah, sure.
to
Yeah, you
let
do.
them know that the changes are coming. And
Reach out.
I can work. I'm a little bit outside my zone in terms of the promotion of new service, but I can work with them to make sure that we're reaching out to these community-based organizations and making sure that that they are letting their network of people know that the changes are coming when they're coming. I also believe with the launch of Division, or I should say FX Division, that there will be a celebration along the line, and there'll be promotions for that as well. So in doing that, we'll also be promoting the launch date of the new service.
Maybe Jason will go.
Great, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, right. Very helpful.
Are there any other questions before we, the process from this point forward is that we will hold a public hearing and see if there's anyone who wishes to speak to this ordinance.
You can speak to it, but you're not, you're wasting your time. All these decisions are made and, they're just going through the motions here.
And then you'll have a final opportunity to make comments or questions. But I don't see any additional questions at this point. Oh,
there's Ozzy on his phone. Look, I don't blame him. You can pay attention to this crap.
Director Edwards. Yes, there you are.
I thank you, Tom, and thank you, Director Wade, for bringing that issue. I think I wasn't completely satisfied with the answer.
Oh,
I guess because I get concerned about folks that are impacted being included in the process.
Ooh, yeah, there you go.
And I think that's what Director Wade was really trying to address, is that these community-based organizations are going to be informed along the way, not after decisions have been made.
He just said it, folks. He just nailed it. He does nail it a lot of the time, this guy. He's one of the few voices that speaks up. In the end, he'll always support it, but at least he does. He's right. He got it right on the head of the nail there, buddy.
So I can't speak for the entire community engagement department, but Division FX has been a project that has been underway for several years, and community-based organizations have been part of that.
Community-based organizations means nothing. Okay, it means nothing. As I just said, they're like poverty pimp organizations.
Process throughout the entire, going all the way back to planning of it through construction. And my understanding is
I don't remember a thing about this. They announced they were going to do it. They're going to get the money from the tax grab, the 2017, or part of the money from that. I mean, there was no public input on this. They're saying, well, the community organizations who are got six-figure executives themselves, these technocratic agencies don't count.
Involved in the launch celebration as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Well, you see,
Dr. Baumann?
He hit it, but he doesn't, he's the same as the rest of them. Even Ozzy will come up with a great question, but then he won't follow up. And here's Keith. He said, great question. Accepted their answer, whatever their answer was. I accept it.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to pause and maybe celebrate right now. Say congratulations to TRIMET on completing or getting ready to complete the Division Transit project. This is
you can't run your bus service, but congratulations on your new service. You got your priorities backwards, folks, but we'll congratulate you because we're the TRIMET sock puppets.
a big deal and a great thing for the community, great thing for the East Side.
Nope.
And I'm very glad that the analysis that Carl has conducted shows that it has a positive impact on a low-income and minority community.
I would think that a Title VI equity analysis should be performed by somebody who's not getting their paycheck from TRIMET.
So this has been a long time coming, and congratulations to everybody for all your hard work and successful results.
Yeah, you get out the chair. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to go, we'll now hold a public hearing on Ordinance 366.
What? There's no
And
vote?
I'll ask if there's anyone who did not speak during our earlier public comment that would like to speak on the ordinance. will provide them an opportunity to do so at this point if they would raise their hand. And Kimberly, you'll have to help me if there's anyone who has indicated an interest to speak to this.
Look at her picture down here.
Thank you, President Simmons. At this time, I am not seeing any
What? Nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to public speak on this issue. You guys are shocking me.
individuals with hands raised.
Okay. So this will be the last opportunity then for the board if you have any additional questions or any further discussion on Ordinance 366. As noted, we don't take action on it today.
Look at Ozzy. He's on his phone there.
Okay, hearing none. If there's no other business to come before the board, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting and mention that our next regular scheduled meeting is going to be Wednesday, April 27th at 9 a.m. And prior to that at 8 a.m. will be the Multnomah Multnomah County Tax Supervising Conservation Commission meeting at 8 o'clock in the same location. And as General Manager DeSue indicated, there could be a change in venue of where the meeting's going to be held.
Cut this. This went 41 minutes of this nonsense. Can you believe they just drag it out? Over and out.